Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
In the 90s, we were just teeny tykes. We liked our movies and our bikes. We wanted to be DJs, but we were just teeny gals. So we went off to college and we remained best pals. 20 years later, we're still watching flicks and we're bringing you the favorite bit by bit. Sweetie and Sweetie are here to say it's the Large Marge Santa's podcast. Hey.
Hey guys, welcome to the Large Marge Santa's podcast, your favorite podcast where two sweetie sisters talk about movies that shaped their childhood. I'm Sweetie with an IE.
And I'm Sweetie with a Y.
Coming back at you.
Hey.
We just talked about how we've
Just
been moving to recording every other week, which is a shame.
You know
but
what? Such is
we
life.
got shit to do. We've dedicated, we used to have a dedicated podcast day, I feel like. Or we used to have two. Remember those glory days?
Yeah,
that's crazy. So now it's just like, between all the shit going on in our lives, hard to find the time. But, we're at least going to do every other week. I feel like we can do that. Definitely doable. So
it's like
minimum.
Payday. Get paid. You listen to the Sweeties.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. I love that idea.
I mean, not everyone probably has the same pay schedule, but whatever.
So
Speaking of pay.
Speaking of money, today we did not my favorite film by any means, Blank Check.
Guys, what is this movie? Where did it come from? Who thought of
This film.
What was the process like in the writer's room? I have so many questions, but most importantly, wow, what the fuck?
This
That's
is a
the
bad
question.
movie, guys. And I feel like we don't say that too often when we have been doing movies from our childhood. Maybe we'd say that about ones, we've covered that we haven't really seen, but they're popular. Maybe we would have said that. But I feel like we've yet to really say one that we remember from childhood is bad.
No, we said this exactly the same thing about Pippi Longstocking.
No, that was
The New
bad.
Adventures.
Good.
No, but this is but I think a little bit same with this. It's like hilariously bad.
This is bad. But it's not good, guys.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Let's be honest.
It's a terrible film. So here is where this movie sort of resides in the Sweetie canon. Because we haven't watched it a lot, but it does stick out for me for a certain reason. Here's the quick story. So when I was I don't know, I think I was in 6th grade or something. Sweetie would have been in 3rd or 4th, right? And February vacation rolls around and we're not going on a vacation this year. So Mom's like, what am I going to do with you two? She doesn't talk like that, but in my mind she does.
Like we were criminal children who couldn't be left to their own devices.
We stayed home alone all the time. Anyway, so she's like, I'm going to put you in this camp, quotes around the word camp, that took place at the adjoining schools. So we went to East Elementary and the next town over was Wellfleet Elementary. Tend to be kind of weird kids. They got cooler as we went in high school, but when you first met them, you're like, these kids are weird. Anyway.
I think they were just weird because we didn't know them. I don't think they were actually weird.
The ones in my grade were weird.
No offense, kids from up.
So there's this camp, and so we got dropped off there just during the work day. Well, my mom and dad were at work, right? So it was just in a gym, and they had activities for us and crafts. I felt way too old to be there. And I was definitely one of the oldest kids there, and I was just like, this sucks. And it was just not fun at all. But the highlight of the week was Friday. We got to go to a movie. Whoa. So they drove us up to probably Dennis or Harwich or whatever.
Why didn't we just go to Wellfleet Cinema?
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't go to Wellfleet Cinema.
It was probably Wellfleet.
Was it?
Probably.
Anyway. And they're like, we're going to see Blank Check.
Also, what did they drive us in?
I don't know. Good question. A bus. I think a bus came to get us. Yeah, it was all with the school.
Weird.
Mom probably paid a couple $100 for us to go there.
Carol?
Yeah, rip off. So then we saw this movie. So we saw this movie in the theater, which is would we have gone to see it if we weren't part of this bizarro camp situation?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it was our kind of movie. I think I blocked it out because it was so bad that I didn't remember any. I remember nothing of this.
This movie is a cheap shot to kids with no creativity. I called it Home Alone adjacent. It's really a Home Alone ripoff and not as good by any means. No. Literally no original ideas. I mean, I guess the whole blank check scenario could be, but it is just so poorly done in very many ways. It's devastating. And, there was tons. I mean, we've talked about this before. We were kids in the 90s, so it felt like there were a lot of kids' movies. I'm sure there are just as many now. They doesn't seem that way to me. I don't know. Like, I'm aware of, like, movies coming out and shit like that. It seemed like the movies were, like, all of these kinds of movies that were, like, all for kids. You know what I mean? Like, it just seemed like a real hot time.
Nothing. You think all the movies at this time were kids' movies?
No, so many more kids' movies than we have now, which seems to be just like...
I don't think that's true. I still think you're out of the kid thing. You're not on the lookout for kids stuff. I'm pretty sure they release kids movies at the same not as frequent as regular movies, but every time you go to the movie theater, look, we'll do a test when we go on Friday. Count how many movies there are for kids advertised. I think that'll give us a good indication.
I think I'm still correct. But I also think that there was this genre of kids movies that once Home Alone came out, which was like a huge deal, right? Like, didn't think it was going to make a lot of money, but it did. Mm-hmm. Then there became these movies that were all, like, in a lot of ways about these kids, almost always little boys, interacting with bad guys, like wanting to grow up too fast. And then by the end, they're like, man, being a doll is hard. Like, I want to be a kid again.
I want to be a kid forever. And then men never grew up. Yeah, that's what happened.
So that seemed to be like the shtick of, like, a lot of movies. And I'm just thinking of Home Alone and then this one, which, like I said, has striking resemblance to, though it came about a couple years later. Well,
I will say that. So I think there's a period of time from, like, the 90s to, I mean, I guess it's kind of still happening today, but a lot sticks out to me from the 90s where there was this trend of, like, two movies that were basically the same plot but were titled different things. So you had your Deep Impact and Armageddon. You had this a little earlier, but The Prestige, The Illusionist. I can't tell those movies apart. I'm not sure which one is which. Ants, A Bug's Life. Turner and Hooch, K9. Like, really couldn't tell you. One has Tom Hanks. Yeah. But there was, like, this thing. It's like two partners were thinking of movies and they both were like, I thought of the best movie ever. And then they couldn't agree on the plot. So they went their separate ways and each made this movie that they wanted to make about the same thing. So for this one, reminds me deeply of Richie Rich. And I get a little bit confused when I'm thinking of it. I'm like, is this the one where he buys, like, a McDonald's in his house? And, like, no.
But Richie Rich was actually rich, though.
Yeah, but the movies aren't exactly the same, but they have, like, these similar concepts where, like, you, as a kid, what's the thing you want? Oh, a water slide in my living room, a McDonald's in my house, a bowling alley in the basement. Like, it's, it's like fantasies. It's about, like, child fantasies.
Totally. And it's so funny watching this now because obviously as an adult, I'm like, if I had $1 million, here's what I'd do. I'd pay off my student loans. I'd pay off my credit card. I'd buy a house. I mean, he buys a house, so at least in that sense, he does have, like, a little bit of responsibility. I'd obviously put some in savings. Like, I'd save some for my kids.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you have such a different, like, mindset and we'll talk about this later because I want to ask you some questions just about, like, and this is what confuses me about this because I thought they made the protagonist of this movie way too young. So the Preston Waters character, main guy, is supposed to be 11. And you're like, when is your concept of money, like, really coming about? And the way they explain it in the movie is because his parents are, let's face it, like, cheapo psychos. But, like, I don't know. I just feel like when you're 11, you're still very much taken care of. And I know that there's this thought in the movie that his parents are, like, basically forcing him to get a job when he's 11 and, like, are very all about, like, make your own way in the world, but he's still very well taken care of. He has a nice house. He has a bike, it's like summer vacation.
This is what I think happened. I think that originally they wrote this movie and the protagonist was supposed to be like 17 or almost 18. Because if you think about this movie, it makes complete sense if he's actually of the age where you'd be like, yes, he's a young professional working for a jackass rich guy. Like, he'd be able to pull all of these things off.
And even the love side of it, which we'll talk about,
so maybe
seems too young for me to be in that and to even have those feelings.
So maybe it was supposed to be this older guy, but then they realized, wait, this isn't marketable. Like, who's gonna, like, what's the demographic for this movie? Like, nobody. I feel like that concept of an older kid getting into shenanigans was very 80s.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we need to, like, modernize this. So we'll make him younger, market it to kids, and it'll be a kid's movie. And then they're like, how do we do that? Oh, we'll just change his age. But didn't think about, like, what would go into making this actually believable.
Right. And like I said before, I think they wanted to really ride the wave of this Home Alone idea. They got someone who looked a lot like Macaulay Culkin. I mean, he's supposed to be, 8 in Home Alone? So he's quite a bit younger. This guy's 11, going to be 12. So this guy is very smart. And they add the technology part of it, which really kind of gets introduced in Home Alone 2, if you want to think about it that way. But they wanted to ride that wave of like, okay, like how do we get this like kid too smart for his own good, able to like manipulate all the adults in his life, and all the adults like ask no questions. It just, I mean, it's understood that it's a movie, and maybe it's not supposed to be totally believable, else you couldn't have the plot of a film. But you have to like a little bit think about, okay, like
this is not,
wait a minute.
It's the most implausible movie I've ever seen in my life. And there's a lot of like really implausible, stupid movies out there, but I'm pretty sure this is number one. Has to be number one. It's just bizarro.
And if it was implausible and entertaining, I'd give it a pass. But like, really, I just felt this movie was like such a ripoff of Home Alone, and
Big
was
and
creepy
a lot
and weird.
of things. Yeah, it's very bizarre. Can't wait. All right, let's talk about it then. I'm excited.
It's time for the sweetie synopsis.
Yeah, sweeties.
I don't have a quote because there's nothing memorable, because this movie wasn't funny or clever. That's a quote for you.
Cool. Preston Waters is an 11-year-old. He seems like he's 7. I was like, he just learned to read like last year. And so he's supposedly 11. Maybe he skipped grades or something. I don't know.
I mean, he does seem intelligent. I mean, the way he knows, like I said, his computer program and stuff about money and like all that stuff is like, okay, maybe he's a little bit older, but he looks young.
Yeah, he's very smart, looks like a baby. Even though he's really smart and seems to like have a lot going for him, his father is like, I don't understand, son. When I was your age, I had a job and was already saving.
I think he said I had a business, is the way he phrased it, right?
No, he's like,
because it was like some kind of paper route or something.
The whole beginning of part in the movie, I was like, is this a fucked up version? Because it was like the sentences were out of order or something, and I could not follow a fucking thing. There was like these 2 brothers who were like moving things into Preston's room, and I swear to God that I was like, you should be more like your brothers who have a business.
What was their business?
They
never show it.
What business? They have like a weird shirt on, I guess, but I'm so confused. And then I was like, why are the brothers moving into Preston's room? But the whole time they were moving in Preston's
they need
computer.
it for their business.
Why do they need Preston's computer for their
the business?
It made no sense. I have still no idea what was happening in the beginning. I have half a mind to go back and watch it again to be like, wait, what?
Wait, well, you forgot the real beginning scene, which is like some dude running through.
So
like
the beginning scene is
industrial
the fugitive, and like literally it's a fugitive running, and it's that like very 80s like dun, 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 like 90s like like a like smoky, foggy, like dark silhouettes in the beginning. And this guy like escapes from prison, runs to the barn or whatever, finds his welder's mask that he had been saving for years, puts it on, blow torches this lock or whatever, opens it. Old suitcase buried in the ground, stuffed of money. I'd say, I don't know, $1 million in that suitcase.
This is nest egg.
Oh, money. So we're like, okay, that's a thing. So then we meet Preston, where he has like a terrible life, it seems. His parents are like abusive emotionally. They're like, why don't you have a job? It's like his birthday in a week. He's like, Mom, Dad, can I get a bike? They're like, oh, sorry, son. You should have thought about that before. You didn't save any money. Yeah.
You need a job to save for this bike. What's a birthday present?
He goes to like another kid's birthday party, and his dad's like, here's a quarter. And all the rides cost like too much money.
What amusement park have you ever been to that you go and have to pay money for different rides?
Yeah, I mean, like it's like a fair situation, right? Where you like have tickets or whatever, like with that kind of thing. So he can only go on like the little kid ride. So he's not friends with anyone. There's this one like ugly redheaded kid who's really mean and is very mean to him, but he has no friends, and it's pretty sad. And you're like, oh, he has no friends because he doesn't even have any money. And then he's like, Dad, why don't we have any money?
That's why he doesn't have any
poor?
friends, or is he like a little jerk? I have a feeling he's like a little jerk.
I thought it was they implied it was because he didn't have enough money to hang out with anyone.
What?
It was like a weird. That's
Dude, they live in Indiana.
Really weird. So yeah, he's at home. He's like eating his weird dinner, and it's like,
what was that? A huge thing of fried rice? It looked
it looked like Trader Joe's like fried rice in the package.
The whole plate,
and you
was
just
full
like
of fried
empty it. It was just like a giant walk. It was like
child services.
walk
These
and roll.
parents suck.
And he's like, "Why are we poor?" And they're like in this beautiful house, and they're like, "What? No, we just save our money." I'm like, you save your money, you can only give your child a quarter to go to some other kid's birthday party. Real nice. So then he's on his bike, Preston's ragtag.
Wait, sorry. So go back. So it's his birthday in a week. So his grandmother sends him a card.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, yeah, money. Because, despite his parents being cheapos, they've raised someone who's obviously like very aware about money. So he's all about, and the theme being, I don't have any friends, I don't have any money. So he wants some money. So he shakes the card and out pops a check. And he's like, man, Grandma didn't even fill it in. And so the dad explains to him this idea of a blank check, meaning like basically if someone signs it, signs the front, you can put in your name and then any amount of money you want. So the mom's like, how much did you get last year? And he's like, $1,000. Grandmother only gave him $10 last year, which in 1994 money was probably
a lot.
Probably not pretty good. So this year, Dad's like, well, we'll give you one more dollar this year because you're turning 12. So he gets 11 whole dollars from his grandmother. And he's like, sweet, I'm putting that in the bank, and I'm going to collect interest on that, and in 3,000 years, I'm going to have $1 million. That's what he figures out. He has this like cool little program on his computer, his Macintosh.
That can't be right. What about inflation or whatever? Like, is that,
Right.
I don't know. Anyways, so he's all jazzed about that, Sitch. Glad to have that knowledge of scheming in his life now. So he's on his bike.
Goes to the bank to deposit
Goes
the check.
to the bank to try to deposit the $11 check. And this bitch lady, Shay, what was her last name?
Stanley?
She's like, Shay Stanley, who's advertised on the front window of the bank as being a bank teller.
No, they were like flyers with her picture on
They were like flyers advertising
What?
her in the way that like a real estate agent would be like, come see Sharon about this house. But it was a bank teller. And I thought like she owned the bank, but then he goes in the bank and she's just like a teller.
Yeah. Or like a mortgage lender or something.
Happening.
She's literally like cashing paychecks.
Yeah, so he tries to open a savings account, and she's like, "Ooh, sorry, we have a limit, minimum of $200 to open a bank account." And he's like, "What?" Which I'm like, "Okay, that is low. Like, throw the kid
I
a
don't
bone."
think that's true because I've had a lot less money in my bank account for most of my life.
Here's the thing about Shay Stanley, though, guys. She's not actually a bank teller, so she didn't know what she was doing. She was just making shit up. She's actually an FBI agent trying to like con her boss in this bank to like reveal themselves as crooks or whatever. I don't know. They don't give us a lot of backstory on why the FBI is like after these people or what that bad guy did in the beginning of the movie. He like did something to get this money, like thieved it, but we don't know anything about like why is he in jail. He stole this money like before he went to jail. So what is he in jail for? We don't get any of that. What we find out is that this guy strikes a deal with Mr. Biederman,
The owner of the bank.
the owner of the bank. And like this part, I don't remember now at all that I'm trying to think of it. But like, what is the whole thing with the money?
So he brings to Mr. Biederman a briefcase of $1 million, right? So when you get money, I'm assuming it's from like a bank robbery because he says that the numbers on the bills are in order. So when a bank has money, like the way they can trace bills from a bank robbery is because like, if you just had money like from a bank or whatever, or you get money wherever, you're going to have bills with all different numbers. But if you have bills with consecutive numbers, that's from like one
And
pile.
they had like the FBI when she was looking at it with the black light. It it had like an FBI
Yeah,
stamp.
so or the bills were marked or whatever. So they have to launder this money. So Biederman like was somehow involved with the bad guy whose name is Quigley, and he testified against him. That's why he went to jail. So he comes back to Biederman. He's like, I should have killed you, but I need you to launder this $1 million, or like I can't use it. So the whole plan is that Biederman is gonna like put it in the bank, and then Quigley is going to send some guy named Juice to the bank and have a check from this Quigley guy made out to cash, and then he's going to get $1 million that way. So they're going to launder it basically like through the bank is the idea. So he's like, okay, cool, got that plan. So Biederman gives him this checkbook, so he knows exactly like what checks is going to come in with this guy Juice, so he knows like exactly the sign to give him like the $1 million. So at the same time, Preston is also depositing his check, or trying to, the $11 check. He gets turned away because it's supposed to be $200. He's like, bummer. He's kind of like moping or whatever, and he's in the parking lot, and Quigley, the gangster guy, is also in the parking lot, and he's Preston is behind him with his bike. It like tipped over or something like that. I don't know. And like your worst nightmare is someone like backs into you and you're on a bike and they don't see you. And Preston yells out, but then he's able to like scramble away, but his bike gets like totaled.
Trashed.
Yep.
Trashed.
And so Quigley is like, what the fuck, blah, 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 like freaking out. And he wasn't even going to do anything. But then like all these like ladies come running over. Are you okay, little kid? Blah, blah, blah. And then that weirdo little redhead friend is there and is like saying like, man, you smell like vodka.
Yeah, who's suddenly on his side
Yeah.
now. Okay.
And then Quigley sees cops like in the distance. He's like, okay, I got to get away from this. Because I guess the idea is he's an escaped convict.
Yeah, he was still in his orange jumpsuit, so
okay.
I guess
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, like I got to get rid of this situation immediately. I got to get out of here. So he pulls out that checkbook that the banker gave him, writes a check, just signs it, and he goes, kid, your dad will know what to do with this. Like, give it to him. What is it, sweetie?
It's a blank check.
A blank check.
Wow. What are the odds? So Preston goes home and he's like, what a shitty day. He's like, Mom, Dad, I almost got killed. So somebody ran me over in their car and my bike is ruined. And the dad's like,
And like, I need a new bicycle.
yeah. Are you? What did I tell you about that? This is your fault. You should have been saving your money so you could buy yourself a new
What
bicycle.
did we tell you about taking care of your things?
Of your bicycle.
We're not replacing them.
It was crazy.
It's crazy.
It was the craziest thing I ever heard. Like, what is happening right now? So he's like all like bummed, and he's like, I want to get out of here. I want to move out. And I'm like, I'm right there with you, kid. Like these parents
out. Emancipate yourself.
Child services, please come here now. So he's on his little computer and he's like, all of a sudden remembers this check. So he whips it out. He's like, a blank check. So he puts it in his computer program. He's typing what the amount he wants to be on the check. He starts small. $200. Oh, cool. Yeah,
I'll
that's
get the
enough.
savings
That's
account.
enough for my savings account, and then I can save. But then he's like, let's think bigger. So then he moves up to like 1,000, and then it's like boop ba doo ba doo, and then $1 million. Dollars. As luck would have it, it's exactly the amount that Quigley guy gave that other guy. So, wow, what are the odds? Prints it out on the check, writes it to cash. I don't know how kids know that that's a thing. I did not know that was a thing until like last year.
Dang.
That was in this like a TV show or a movie or something where they were like
This movie?
the initials C. It was like Children's Association something.
Yeah.
That's something. And they're like, it's cash. That might have been an episode from Full House. But so he does that, takes it to the bank. The lady pretty much laughs at him. It's not Shay this time. It's this other lady, Udowitz. And she's laughs at him and is like, okay, I'm going to take you to see my manager. So goes to Biedermeyer. Who's
Biederman.
Isn't
Biedermeyer? Yeah.
Biederman is like a character from Full House. Sorry. I'm in my like 10th rewatch of Full House, so it's all blending in.
Biedermeyer? It might be Biedermeyer.
Yeah, it's Biedermeyer. So she gives the check to Biedermeyer and is like, this kid tried to give me this. And he immediately sees the name on the check, sees that it's made out to cash for $1 million.
It's the checkbook he gave him.
It's the checkbook. So he's like, Juice? Biederman. Juice? Is that you? And he's like, no thanks. I don't need juice. I'm not thirsty. And then they like do this thing and he says like suspicious things. Preston's acting like really weird and like quiet and like not
And
assertive at
serious?
all
Yeah.
with like tears in his eyes.
Well, he was so nervous trying to cash it, and then all of a sudden he's like stone-faced killer. He's like,
It's so weird.
He's like, I don't need juice.
Yeah.
Mr. Quigley, he didn't.
You
I
know
run
where
into him. He ran
yeah.
into me.
Where'd
Like,
you get? Yeah, it's like what? So obviously the guy falls for it and is like, okay, let's give you the money. Like, boy, Quigley's really smart having a kid do this, whatever.
It's pretty
So,
smart. Think about it.
Yeah, so he like shovels all the money in his backpack. Meanwhile, the real Juice is on his way. This is a true comedy of errors, you guys, because Juice comes strolling in, bumps into Preston on his way out. The backpack falls on the ground. Preston's like, oh my God, that was a close one. Like, calm down. Like, this guy's going to be like, oh my God, you have all this money. Like, I'm wearing this casual shirt with license plates on it. I'm obviously going to bust you. Like, what? So Juice goes in. He's like, yo, here's the check, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, very funny. Like, I just gave the money to, like, the real Juice. And he's
Yeah,
like,
the
what are you
Juice.
talking about? So he figures it out that the kid was not the right Juice. They, like, try to run after him. They can't find him. It's a mess. Now they have to tell Quigley, like, ooh, bad news. Like, I gave all your money away to some kid. Luckily, it's a somewhat small town of somewhere, Indiana, we guess. And they're
Erie,
like,
Indiana.
don't worry, easy solution to find this kid. Look in the newspaper. There's events for kids. We'll just go to all these events until we find him. Like, what? Like,
Genius!
Kids will only do these 7 events.
Oh my
like,
God.
so weird.
It's so fucking weird. So Preston goes home, and on the way, he is down, like, biking down his street, and he sees this stone mansion on the block.
It's
basically
small
like a castle.
It might be like a 3-bedroom castle.
And he takes the thing, you know, the real estate signs will say like for sale, and then I'll have like Linda Hamilton is a real estate agent with like a phone number, right?
It's Hamilton.
Whatever. So he takes that, like literally
Wait,
takes
is
it
that
off the
Terminator?
sign and brings it to his room. Good one. And then sets up like a program on his computer that does like a robot speaking voice, because if he calls, he sounds like a little kid.
Let's call it Talk Boy.
Yeah, right. Talk boy. Coincidentally, Quigley, the gangster, is also trying to buy that house.
A lot of eyes on that castle.
And it's like
want
these
it.
two old people.
It was a great deal.
It was a fucking steal, guys. The mansion was $170,000. I don't care if this is 1994 money. That is dirt cheap. I don't care if this is Indiana. That place was huge. So it's these like two old people, and they're like, oh, I don't know. Like, is that a good deal? And they're kind of like hemming and hawing. So then Preston calls using this talk boy voice and is like, I want to put a cash bin on the house. And it's like a little bit over asking. And then like his mom is like also talking. So she by mistake says like, make it 3. And so he ends up offering $300,000, which was like almost double the asking price, right? So Quigley guy loses it. He also loses his shit and is like wicked pissed. Like, how did I get like bought out by this? Who is this Mr. McIntosh? And this is where this Mr. McIntosh name gets born, because the real estate agent is like, what's your name? And he's like looking around, you know, he's like, oh, it's like Mrs. Doubtfire. Like, oh, what name can I make for anything that's nearby?
Our
Whoa.
favorite movie trope.
Mr. Lamp. No. Mr. Sneaker.
like-
No. Mr. McIntosh.
And like the way that they do it is like, it's not even like, it's just the Apple icon, right? It's not like it even says Macintosh, but it does say like Apple Performa. So I was like, is he gonna be like Mac Performa? I was like, wow, that's a cool name. But
like
now
that.
I get it. But yeah, so now he's like, all right, Mr. Macintosh.
He owns a house.
So now he somehow owns a house, has managed to meet up with the real estate agent and convince her that he, 11-year-old Preston Waters, is Mr. McIntosh's a personal assistant or something. Question mark. It's like, this is where it gets, I mean, it was already crazy before, but this is just ridiculous.
I don't think this is right. This is where the wheels come off, okay? I don't think a minor can buy a house. I'm just going to say that. I'm pretty sure you cannot buy a house if you're a minor.
I'm pretty sure in Indiana, I mean, this has to be the law.
Even if you
also.
were like a crazy child actor with millions of dollars, you can't march and buy a house. Like, someone has to do it for you. You
Right.
can give them
There
the money.
has to be, like, a
but
thing.
It's
Even
like
if
the
it's-
reverse. It's like he's buying for an adult.
Yeah.
Like, adult would have to buy for him if he was like, you know what I mean? It's like he should have like hired an adult to be
But
someone buying all
again,
the shit.
this is like Home Alone. I mean, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. when he's like, oh yeah, my dad's getting the bags out, here's the credit card, and they're just like cha-ching, and they just do it. Maybe in the 90s it was just a very free time, kids could just spend money.
I mean, there is so
whenever
much
they
trust in this 11-year-old. No one even questions him is the weird thing. There was like later on he like finally kind of gets put in his place because he's the only kid at this party, and I was like, finally, by this like jerky bartender or whatever, like, kid, go find your parents, like, don't touch the gifts. I'm like, finally someone's making some sense here. Like, why is this kid running around with nobody asking any questions?
So then he just goes on a buying spree for under the like guise of Mr. McIntosh. Oh, Mr. McIntosh needs a big water slide in his backyard. Oh, I was talking to Mr. McIntosh today, and he was like, oh, weird thing. I've always wanted a go-kart track in my backyard. So it's like this weird fucking thing. He gets a limo.
Well, the way he phrases it is that Mr. McIntosh didn't have any kids, and like he
missed out on his childhood,
yeah.
So has hired me to live out his childhood for him. And the limo driver like makes like he's like, oh, that makes sense. Like the limo driver really is like the voice of reason.
Right.
Like I feel like he is us. Maybe he still wants to get paid, so he's not questioning it too much. But I think there is a part of him that's like, this is strange, but I'm just going to go with it because I'm a limo driver. What else do I have? So Preston's just like having a great time. He's buying all this shit. His house is like a giant playground, amusement park. Meanwhile, the bad guys are still trying to track Preston down. Preston runs into Shay Stanley again. And
was that the jogging?
I think
he ran into her
so.
jogging.
Yeah, she's like jogging with her baseball cap falling off of her head. It was really a sight to see. And he pulls up in the limo and he's like, hey. And okay, so it's just like, okay, the rest of the movie is so deeply disturbing and uncomfortable because now he's trying to like woo Shay Stanley, who's probably 30 years old and an FBI agent. She's, let me tell you and remind you, one of two women in this movie. The other one is the mom, who's also clueless as fuck. Shay Stanley is supposed to be an FBI agent. This kid comes up to her in a limo and starts like asking her things. Meanwhile, her job right now is to find out who this weird underground millionaire is and like smoke him out.
Because she's working at the bank when the real estate agent comes in with like a ton of cash and is like, wow, like usually people don't deal with cash like this anymore. And she's like, oh yeah, I had this crazy sale, like Mr. McIntosh. So that's where she gets the name Mr. McIntosh. And then she hears Preston say it too and starts putting two and two together and is like, okay,
not
something's
because
up.
Then after the limo, she sees him in the limo. One of her FBI partners in the van scoping the scene out and is like, huh. And he might not even be an FBI agent. He might just be like the sound guy. The sound guy at the FBI is like, hey, that was kind of weird, huh? That kid. He's kind of young to have a job, right? And she's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess. And then she just kind of shrugs it off. I thought she was playing dumb, you guys, and that she was going to con everyone and be like, I knew it was him the whole time. No, Shay Stanley is dumb as fuck. Like, she does not get it until the very, very end when Preston, spoiler, is like, I'm Mr. McIntosh.
Okay, I could like kind of get it because it feels like almost like a little bit of a Michael Jackson thing going on here when he had like, like all this kiddie stuff and he would be like, say he was like the Mr. McIntosh character aside from like the pedophilia, but like that kind of a situation, right? But what I do not get and why people didn't question it was when Preston would be like, yep, I'm working today. I'm working for Mr. McIntosh. Again, you are 11. The kid is walking around in a suit.
Like,
he's ordering people around. You don't have an 11-year-old do that.
Red flags all over the
like,
place.
You might have an 11-year-old playing with your toys in your backyard, but like, what?
Yeah. And no one's like, oh, yeah, I should really meet this person that I'm signing a contract to do a $100,000 party for.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't anybody, no one is thinking logically. They're just like, money,
I just felt like I was in
money.
like a dream world. Like, what? Am I the only one seeing that this kid is like
might be Erie, Indiana.
4'5", freckly little kid
so
who
weird.
doesn't know anything?
It's so bizarre.
Oh,
so, at this point, the bad guys figure out, they start putting a couple clues together. They find that redhead kid and like make him tell them where this Preston lives. he does it. Unfortunately, they dangle him like over a building, so he has
The
to.
old dangler
but
trick.
Whatever. So they like bust down his house, and no one's there because everyone's at Mr. McIntosh's and Preston's big blowout birthday party, which is a huge event at the old castle, and it's a great event. It seems interesting.
It's $100,000
You know,
party.
a lot of people in
$110,000
dresses.
party.
No, that was $100,000.
$10,000 deposit.
Whoa, okay. So Preston, the bad guys bust down the door. Preston immediately switches into Kevin McAllister mode. Is like, oh yeah, I have 20 booby traps rigged up, ready to go.
Well,
So-
wait, sorry. So go back. So he, comes to terms at the party. He's realizing that being a millionaire is like really not that fun because, you don't have a lot. He still doesn't have any friends.
No
He
friends.
basically paid people to be his friends,
Yeah.
the limo driver, to have this party. But it's like no fun at all. And then when he gets the bill for the party, he puts it into his little handy dandy, okay, how much have I spent? And he's, over $300 or something like that? Or he only has 300 left. I forgot like what the math situation was there. But anyway, he's like, oh shit, I spent all of them. I spent $1 million in 6 days. Like, what a loser. What were you doing?
I mean, I feel him. We both like to, money burns a hole in our pocket, as we say. But it's not like it was his money to begin. It's not like he earned it. So it's just like, of course, I'm going to spend this on a bunch of shit. But it's also a lesson about like his dad said, money, whatever, blah blah blah.
But money can't buy happiness, right? So he's like kind of
Can't
bummed
buy me
about it.
love.
And he tells, basically, so the party organizer, who's this like crazy woman named Yvonne, once she finds out that like, because he's like, I don't know where Mr. McIntosh is. Like, I don't know when you're going to get paid. She's like, that's it. Close the party down. It's over. So like everyone leaves and he's by himself, kind of moping again, being like, oh man, this money stuff sure isn't what it's cracked up to be. Still don't have any friends. Wah. And then the gangsters finally find him.
Bust on him, and then for a minute they're like, oh, maybe Quigley, you should say you're Mr. McIntosh, and that would just like solve this whole thing. Because it's not like, the money was cash that was like fraudulently like earned, so it's not like the kid is obligated to get that money back to him, because there's no way for them to like force him. Like they can't go to the police and be like, this kid spent all my money that I stole. Like that's not how it works. So
It was a legit check.
right, yeah. So they're like, really, there's nothing they can do at
steal
this
it.
point. They just fucked up. So then the FBI here they come finally breaking the case. Shay Stanley is like, hey, where's Mr. McIntosh? Like, girl. So then
Put it together.
Quigley's like, oh, I'm Mr. McIntosh. I don't know what he thought the FBI wanted with Mr. McIntosh. That would have been a good, like, the tone in their voice. FBI, where's Mr. McIntosh?
Yeah.
Is not like, FBI, have you seen a Mr. McIntosh? I have a few questions for him. Like, why would you volunteer yourself and be like, I'm Mr. McIntosh? So they arrest him immediately, and he's like, damn it. And then they arrest the other bad guys, and then everyone just thinks that Mr. McIntosh was this like fraud guy the whole time, and Preston gets away with it scot-free. And
Is
it's
there
just
any
like,
reason that
lesson
guy
learned?
Quigley did that because he's an escaped convict and he was like, fine, I'll be like somebody else?
That's what he was hoping.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is like, don't volunteer Tone Loc or something. Like, be like, this is him. And like, it's not good news that the FBI has for Mr. McIntosh. Yeah. So it's just a strange choice. But yeah, and then learn the lesson. Oh, I should have paid more attention to you. I shouldn't have been an abusive dad.
Oh,
Sad.
the dad, yeah.
And then everything's okay. And then Preston's like, oh, I do like my family. And then he gets the bike. Now his parents get him
You
the
don't
bike.
want to rewind to the real big scene?
So this whole time, like I said, deeply devastating section of this movie. I was hoping to skim over, but Sweetie has brought it to the surface yet again. So Shay Stanley has a great side plot where she is the romantic fantasy / interest of Preston Waters. Again, and this woman is dumb as rocks. I don't know what she thinks she's doing. He's like, Mr. McIntosh would like to take you out to dinner. And then he shows up instead and is like, I'm here for Mr. McIntosh, which like, okay.
And he's like all in a suit. He gives her a necklace.
This is from
these
Mr.
are all
McIntosh.
signs to be like, hey kid,
run
I
away.
like. What bothers me is she never says anything like, I like you as a friend. Like I feel uncomfortable. She is flirting with him back. It's every boy's like fantasy.
It's so bad.
Creepy.
And then he like takes her. They decide instead to go out for hamburgers, very big. And they go to like this fountain area, and he's like, wait till you see this. And he like brings her into the middle of this thing. And then it's like one of those like timed like fountains spraying things. And then they play this music that is like, I looked at Sweetie and I was like, this is I'm falling in love with you music from like a romantic comedy. Like 10 Things I Hate About You. We're throwing paint at each other in water balloons. Like that, it was that kind of scene. And she's soaking wet in this like tiny dress. At one point, her skirt like flies right up. You can see her butt. And we're like, what is happening? So then they like run away together. And then he drops her off in a limo. And she's like, I'm going to need to see Mr. McIntosh. But she's still trying to figure out who's this person? Who is this person? And then he's like, okay. And then I don't know, some weird exchange happens.
So remember, she's like, I had such
a fun time. I haven't done this in so long.
It.
And she's like sitting close to him. And then she's like, okay. And then kisses him.
No, they do shake hands.
They shake hands
in the limo. Sorry.
No, but then the kiss.
Yeah, at the very end
of the scene or the movie.
No, the movie.
Okay, let's go. Let's jump to there. Okay, so they part ways. Preston's like, I have a girlfriend, yay! And like the creepiest thing is that like the limo driver's like, yeah, man, like good job. Like, what is happening? I don't understand. Why are we encouraging this? So okay, yeah. So then all the other stuff happens that we already talked about. And then at the end of the movie, once Shay finally understands the actual truth of the matter is when the worst thing imaginable happens.
Well, so they're like talking and he's like, when can I see you again? And again, this is a great time for Shay to be like, you know what, kid, you're sweet, but I'm 35, you're 11, like it's never going to work out in a really nice way. You don't have to totally break his heart. But she's like, oh, like maybe in like, let's say, look me up in 10 years, like that whole thing. And he's like, how about 7? How about 6? And they like barter it down. So basically he would be legal. He'd be 18 because he just turned 12. So 6 years, he'll be 18, guys. Yeah. And then instead of what you would think would be like, okay, this would be the appropriate time where she reaches over and kisses him on the top of the head, right? That's non-sexual. That's like platonic. What does she do? Kisses him on the lips! If I saw that in the movie theater, I wonder if people were like, ah!
Look at the camp counselors that took us to this movie. Like, what were they thinking? Were they like, what the fuck? Sweetie and I screamed out loud. The only time I've been more terrified is 2 weeks ago when we watched Indian in the Cupboard and the rat jumped out of the thing. Oh, it was like, we were just like, God. Ah! Like, it was such a visceral reaction and it was so upsetting. She like full on, she like brings his mouth like close to her and just like smooches full on the lips. It's like, guys, what is happening? And we have to bring it up, but like this is so wrong. And it would not, Sweetie said this, but like if this was reversed and it was a little girl who had fallen in love with this older man and he like kissed her on the lips goodbye.
Here's an example. Because they don't really do this for girl protagonists. This is something that we've seen time and time again with men, and it's okay. Okay, older women, cougar, haha, it's funny. Yeah. Let's say My Girl, right? You have that scene where Veda is very much obsessed with her teacher, and then he does do the right thing, sits her down and says, Veda, I like you. We're friends, but I'm your teacher and I am older, blah, blah, blah. But let's just say, for instance, what if he reached over and then kissed her on the damn lips? What would your reaction be?
So the same it is now. Well, it's just like, yeah.
It's a crazy, weird
would
double
not be
standard.
okay. And it's just really, I don't understand it. It's so bizarre. Wow. I've never been more shocked in my life.
I mean, is it supposed to be that like men, no matter what age they are, can be like lady killers
and get like whatever they want or something? It's very bizarre. Yeah, it's so strange.
Oh my God.
But yeah.
So then this perpetuates because he goes back to his parents and he gets a bicycle, and he's back with his family, and it's kind of one of those things, just like in Home Alone, where he's like, my family's not so bad, like
no harm done.
Yeah. And then so he blows out his candles, and his dad's like, kind of creepily in his ear, he's like, careful what you wish for.
As if he got into this whole situation
Yeah.
with Mr.
Like
McIntosh
some
because he wished for it.
Wrong movie, Dad.
Again, yeah, this isn't big.
So he like looks up and he has, like we said, those weird flyers of Shay Stanley from the bank, like hanging up, and he's like, and does this like creepy grin wink, and I'm like, dude, it's never gonna happen.
I mean, it might. She's kissed him on the lips. Who knows what that bitch is thinking? But it's so weird. And then, yeah, it's just very upsetting. So that's that whole thing, which is obviously deeply disturbing. But that's the movie, guys. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So strange. I have to tell you, I was shocked this whole time. I thought that this movie was revolving around an actual transaction of money. I thought he just like went to the bank and they just gave him the money and he was just like coasting on that. And the whole time I was like, before I realized what it really was, I was like, why didn't they just track down like who took the money and who cashed the check? I didn't get it at all.
Cash.
And now the fact that it's like, oh, it was stolen money, it was this, it was being laundered, like that whole thing. Now like that all makes sense. But overall, the plot does not make the overarching thing does not make sense, which is why anybody would let this kid do anything is just ruins most of the movie for me.
Well, and again, I'm just going to throw this in there. It doesn't make sense to me. You do not need the love story in this. This is about an 11-year-old boy who's learning this lesson about you don't need money. Money is not everything. You don't need money for happiness. You know, he thought it was, and it really didn't bring him any happiness. That's the moral of the story. I'm unclear why this like love interest part was brought into it.
Right. But I don't even know if it was like buying him happiness. His main goal was to buy a house that he could move away from his terrible family. So it also seemed to be like a mix, like a message about like loving your family, even though they're dicks.
Right. And because remember when we did Home Alone, we were like, okay, Kevin is a horrible person. And he needed to learn that lesson because he was a little dick and he needed to grow up. And like, unfortunately it took like time alone and him being by himself to be like, wow, my family like was pretty nice to me and I was just asshole to them.
I mean, Buzz was not nice to him. So
Right. But that's like a brother
Wait,
thing.
didn't we decide the other thing that everybody was really mean to Kevin? I think that's what we decided.
Was it?
I think we pivoted.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That might be it. We have to. We'll read.
Oh, damn,
We'll
should redo
re-listen.
that. But in this case, like you do feel like his parents seem like a little bit out of touch and just don't seem to like realize, you know, his situation and just are like clueless. But they come around in the end because the dad is like, oh, wow, like I haven't really seen my son in a while because he's been working for this Mr. McIntosh character. I really miss him.
So proud of him.
Yeah,
Blah,
like,
blah, blah.
oh, I asked him to get a job, and then that means I never see him, so now I
Right.
regret it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's so weird.
Yeah.
There's no repercussions of like anything that happened. It's not like he gets taught a lesson about like, oh yeah, you shouldn't like forge a check and get $1 million and spend it on everything. It's like, wow, that was a really fun week I had. Okay, here's your bike. Like he gets rewarded
just
for
a
it.
week.
And just like this is why we have all these problems with like males in our society. Just thinking they can do whatever they want and get away with it, and then get presented a bike at the end of the day. Like I'm pretty sure
Oh,
this movie
look
is the
at
cause of
that.
everything.
yeah.
But it's
No, but it's dumb and
wild,
it's tired and yeah.
wild stuff.
Over it.
Wild.
So we didn't talk about who starred in this film. This lovely film. So the main guy, like I said, is sort of like a Macaulay Culkin lookalike. The actor's name is Brian Bonsall. He's still alive, but apparently has gotten into some legal trouble.
Oh,
If you
dear.
Google him, there's some
Oh, dear.
mugshots out there. Not
I
really
know.
sure what the deal is. So he was in like a couple movies, but what I do remember him from, because he's very cute, right? He's very, very cute little boy. He was, if you remember, in Family Ties, they had like the mom had like a baby and there was like this little kid, like, so you had Alex P. Keaton, but then there was like this other kid who was like 5 years old with them. Do you remember this?
What do you mean with them? That he was there?
He was part of the family. In like the later seasons, like she had a baby and then they had this
And then
like
he
other
grew up?
son. Yeah, and to this little boy. So he was in Family Ties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, who had the baby?
The mom did,
The
I'm
little
pretty sure.
boy. This boy was that baby?
Yeah.
Okay. Confusing. He was also the creepy kid in the moon or whatever in Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme, like the kid in the sky who's like the real boy. Very strange. That's what I remember him from, at least on my side. What are you looking up?
Well, I just want to make sure that's legit because,
Sweetie Facts.
yeah.
Might be Sweetie Facts.
Yeah, Andy. Yep. Andy Keaton was his name.
Andy.
Yep. Anyway, so that's the main guy. You had the dad, James Rebhorn, we know him from the dad from Homeland, who is bipolar.
Independence Day.
Has since passed away.
Yeah,
Yep.
sad.
So R.I.P. You have Karen Duffy, who is the creepy Shay Stanley. And coincidentally, her name, so she's also in Dumb and Dumber, if you remember. She's like with the gas man.
The Ulsa?
The Ulsa? Yeah, she's great in that. But also plays a character named Shay.
That is very,
what are the odds?
very bizarre.
So weird. Tone Loc, as we said, sweet role. He's like kind of scary in this. He's not the friendly Ace Ventura D. What's his name in that? D? No. E.
Yeah, he's not. He wears similar clothing, but is like very scary and like busts down doors, like turns keys and locks and like melts the key.
And he seems drunk all the time.
He might be drunk. Like, he was pretty wacky. But I do think that Tone Loc had a decent, he had decent acting chops. I was entertained by him. And I wish, he stuck around a little longer to, like, act some more. I don't know where you're at, Tone, but, like, I think you could do it.
Cole Medina.
Yeah. And then we've got Limo Driver.
I don't write down that guy's name, but it's kind of
He's
a funky
that funny
name.
guy. He's in The Burbs, Little Monsters. He's probably the funniest part. The one time that Sweetie and I did laugh is when he was like saying all these sayings or whatever, like, oh, kill two birds with one stone. Like, who has even killed one bird with one stone? Like, it was just really funny. I was like,
Rick
maybe
Ducamoon.
yeah,
Very Canadian guy.
yeah. That just like monologue was pretty funny and we laughed. And then Quigley is this like character actor who's probably been in every show, at least 5 episodes of Law and Order, probably. He's just one of those guys.
Yep.
And then nobody else really.
Well,
except
this was kind of took me a while to figure out the puzzle of the day. Let's say
Sarsgaard Part 2.
Yeah. So this actor Michael Faustino is in this. He's one of the brothers, and I was like, oh, that's the guy from Married with Children. And then I'm looking into it, and I'm like, wait, he was in the Monster Squad, and then I'm like trying to figure out whatever. And he was Eugene in the Monster Squad, which, if you remember, was like the little kid who's like, monster, mommy in my closet. Like, monster in my closet.
Creature ate my Twinkie.
Creature ate my Twinkie. And he's the one who like writes to the army men, like, army men, monsters, like, send help now. And then they show up and they're like, who's Eugene? Anyway, so he's like tiny in that. He's like 4 years old. So now he's like a pimple-faced, like 13-year-old and like almost, he has the same face, but like, not like doesn't have a lot of lines in this or anything like that. But anyway, his brother is David Faustino, who you know as Bud from
Married with Children.
Married with Children.
And he
yes.
does look like, because when he
does.
walked in, we were like, oh yeah, that's him. But like, it wasn't. But he looks just like
looks
him.
very similar.
Yeah, so he's the only other really person that you would know in this, I think.
Well, other than Debbie Allen.
Allen.
She actually has a really funny role. So Yvonne, the party planner, she's like really over the top. But she's, she's a famous dancer, choreographer, and she was known for Fame, the movie and the TV series. Fame, I'm gonna live forever. And like I told Sweetie, Felicia Rashad's sister, also known as Mrs. Cosby.
She does look like her, yeah. Bitch is dead to me after the Cosby trials, but like, whatever.
Oh, no.
So
random cast, but, some peeps.
So one thing that stuck out. So obviously this movie was made in the 90s. Did we say what year?
90s.
This movie was made 1994. So I'm sure there was like a lot of 90s things in this, but the biggest one to me, and I wonder if we have the same observation, but is this weird fad in the 90s where they believed that 25 TVs was much better than just one big screen TV.
That.
So you've seen this in The Witches of Eastwick, Back to the Future 2, and now Blank Check, where you just have like a wall of TV sets that can each either play individual shows or can combine to make one giant picture, but on 25 different screens. It's very strange. I don't know who started this.
it's so funny because instead of thinking, let's make one TV very big, they're like, let's use a bunch of little
That's what I'm
TVs
saying.
to make one big
It's
one.
very strange.
Yeah.
It's like, this is definitely the
Because
90s.
you don't see that anymore because we just have
We
large
have big screen TVs. We're not
screens.
dummies.
It is really
It's
crazy.
so funny. Yeah, but I
That's
just
funny
that
you
made me
pointed that
laugh.
out. I
Yeah.
completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
I too wrote a hip in the 90s list though that we will go over right now. Small sunglasses to be worn in the inside as well as out. So these are not progression lenses. These are not or transition lenses.
His were at the part. He had like those purple ones.
Oh well, purple's different, but like he goes into this like boutique where all the guys have like ponytails and they wear sunglasses
and those like
and
high
slacks.
slides and like
And they're like
And
little
they're-
John Lennon ones. They're like really tiny round ones, and no one has big sunglasses in
least
the
favorite,
90s. They're
yeah.
all these little tiny round
Yeah.
sunglasses. Like what a style! Oh my god! I mean, you'll still see those like occasionally now, but it seemed like everyone only wore those.
Yeah.
You know? It's weird. Jeans with a plaid shirt around the waist. Okay, we were
Classic.
all guilty of that. We all did that.
Classic.
Huge trend. Limos. I mean, limos were really cool in the 90s.
They were
I want to say.
the like white limos,
The white boxy
especially,
ones with the
and the
thing.
ones with the antenna,
Yes.
the shark fin on the back,
Yes.
which we all know. We talked about in Crocodile Dundee.
Thank you.
Iconic scene.
Iconic.
I mean, that's all we'll ever think of when we see that kind of limo. So yeah.
What tribe you say you were from? Backwards cap. So he wears a backwards cap many a time. You see Shay wear one in this very strange scene where she's jogging and she's all sweaty in a backwards cap and her hair's like all falling out of it. I'm like, so the point of the cap was to keep your hair.
It was
like,
resting.
off your face.
It was resting on her head like a yarmulke. It was like falling off. I'm like, how is that staying on?
Oh,
Does
that
she have hidden bobby
bugs
pins in that
me.
thing? Like it was crazy.
That bugs me when they like are trying for like functional costumes, but they just have this like
But
look.
they're like, our actual goal is
Yeah.
to make you look hot, though. So
you couldn't wear it right way. No. That's
So weird.
funny. Wild ties. So like, so this is one of the things. So Preston's like trying to be older, and so that means he has to like wear a suit and tie all the time. As an 11-year-old, okay, if you don't think that looks weird, watch this movie because it looks fucking weird when you see a child in a suit all the time.
yeah. And like, why wasn't someone like, child services? Is this kid getting molested?
He's like a shrunken man. It's so funny.
weird.
So all of his ties are like these wild print and like all this weird like
Geometric patterns.
geometric patterns look like out of comic books, like very
90s,
bright.
very
Yeah,
90s.
very 90s. Haagen-Dazs, huge. I remember there was a
Wait,
Haagen-Dazs.
what was the
in
Haagen-Dazs part?
Hingham. They roll up. That's where they get all the ice cream.
That's where they get
Ice-
the mini garbage can
Yes,
of ice cream.
which I'm pretty sure Haagen-Dazs
Does
give you
not-
a mini garbage can.
No, they don't have
worth
that.
of ice cream.
But yeah, oh man, Haagen-Dazs was huge, and you said there was one in Hingham. I thought
Yeah.
that was a
So we-
TCBY treats.
Oh,
TCBY
that
treats.
you're right. They
It's
did
time
have
for
that.
a
So we didn't have
celebration.
any of this stuff on Cape Cod. Like we had Friendlies and that was it. That was the only ice cream store, or Dairy Queen. That was it. So like when we heard, we only knew about Haagen-Dazs as like the pints of ice cream you would get, but they were a huge
and
deal.
Adventures in Babysitting when they're like, let's go to Haagen-Dazs.
Because I think it was a Midwest thing.
Yes.
Because this is Indiana. That was
Yes.
like Illinois. Like Haagen-Dazs did not exist like east of the Mississippi. I want to
Haagen-Dazs
say.
make actual ice cream, or do they make frozen yogurt?
No, it's actual ice cream, and it's very rich. But it was like one of the first like real pints of ice cream, special ones that you would get, and it was very rich and decadent, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So Haagen-Dazs, big
Haagen-Dazs.
deal. Virtual reality.
Virtual reality.
I mean, it's funny that we still really don't have. We have pretty good virtual reality now, but it's still like really not that big of a thing.
You still have to wear a giant helmet on your head, and I'm like, how like real is that? And I've never put one of those on before, but I'm curious to know like what the deal is. Just I'm a little curious. But yeah, it is funny how we're still like
I feel
convinced
like we're not.
that's the thing
Yeah.
to do. It's
I'm not sold
odd.
on that. I'm
It's
like,
odd.
well, you know what's way more amazing than virtual reality? Like reality. Go outside, like go to a desert. Macintosh computers, as we said. So this is kind of like the first. This was like early '90s. So there had been a couple. It wasn't like the earliest
we had
Macintosh.
that like
we had
exact
that one.
model,
Yep.
and it was given to us by like Rich Geary or something, and I had it in my room for the longest time. It had like all these old games on it. I loved it.
But so when he's making the check, there's this part where he like does a drop down. He's looking at all the fonts and stuff, and it was just like the font of the like main screen of that Macintosh. Whoa, that like took me back.
Yeah, brings me back.
Oh my god! And using that little mouse, which was just like that kind of weird shape with like the little box with like the little big button that you're just like, boop, boop,
and it would get like stuck. Yeah. It wasn't a great mouse. Yeah.
Took me back.
Good
Me back.
times.
Any other hip to the 90s things?
Only the TVs are like the only thing that stuck out to me. I mean, there's like 90s movies tropes, I guess, that stuck out to me. Like, again, we just watched Indian in the Cupboard two weeks ago. And again, two brothers in that movie who are like very similar in age, but I'm pretty sure they're not twins, but they're very close and live together. I don't like in the same room. I'm like, what's going on with that in the 90s? Like that was like a thing. There's, I mean, obviously machoism is a 90s thing. I mean, it's still, I mean, let's get real. It's a today thing. It's a forever thing. But the saying that the brothers say in this is they'll like punch you really hard in the arm. And then they say, don't rub it, be a man. Which, like, the first time they said that, I was like, are they talking about masturbation? Like, I was like, what is that? And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, my God, that is so stupid. The dummest thing I ever heard.
This is where we got into the trouble we have today.
This movie is very inappropriate. The whole beginning, again, I think I might rewatch the beginning because I was pretty sure I was like, is this really happening? There is a scene where the dad's like, the computer can teach you everything except how to have sex with a woman. And then the mom comes in and is like, guess I know where he learned it now or something. It's like something so weird. And I was like, is this real? It was bizarre. Yeah. So fucking weird. So weird. But that was really it. I was just really perplexed by this whole movie. So my observations are all like, what the fuck? So yeah, not super helpful. Sorry. Do you have any other important things?
I have a couple questions for you.
I love questions.
Okay, so as I kind of spoke about in the beginning, when do you feel like you first like thought about or understood the concept of money as a kid? Like, when did you feel that like you wanted to earn your own money so you could like buy things and it wasn't like, you know, stuff that you wanted like mom and dad would get you?
I don't know how old I was, but I remember when I got my first bank account, I was like pretty young, and dad took me to that little bank in the corner, where the post office is. And I got this like little green checkbook, and dad like taught me how to balance my checkbook. Spoiler, I still don't know how to do that. Like, you don't need to know anymore. If you gave it to me right now, I'd be like, what is this? But is it just like, they say balancing your checkbook, which makes it feel like, I'm like, is this algebra? Like, what are we balancing? It's just showing how much money you have in your account, right?
Right.
It's
so
just like,
online,
now I had $500, I spent 30, and then you do the math. Why is that balancing?
Online does it for you now, right? So that's essentially your checkbook.
Thank God.
But when you used to have to do it, so you'd be like, okay, I got $500, but I wrote this, because think about it, it was all checks.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be like, okay, I wrote this check for this bill, but then I got paid $1,200. So you're like balancing, which means you're doing the subtractions and the minuses.
Yeah. But I just always thought, like, in my head when I was little, it was like checks and balances. Like, oh, if I take out money here, I gotta put money here. And like, I guess but whatever. But that's what I think.
Do you don't remember how old you were?
No, but I think we learned money from a young age, just having gone to the Red Barn and being like, okay, I want
this the arcade
candy.
We've talked
about. I want this penny candy, so I need like these many cents, you know? Like, I feel like because I wanted candy, I had a good concept pretty early. Yeah. That's my guess.
So I'll say that, you know, we didn't have allowance. Our parents didn't believe in it. It was, you know, I
don't know if they didn't believe in it. We didn't really need it. Like, what were we going to buy?
Well, and we weren't like, you know, I think our parents knew, and we knew like what was reasonable to ask for and like what wasn't. And like, so they would obviously like buy our clothes and like, you know, within like a certain reasonable thing, toys and stuff, right? Videos and stuff. I don't know, but we weren't like super ASCII kids or bratty, and we had a lot of stuff because like I was the middle and Sweetie was the youngest kid, so we just had lots of stuff from just like years of having like all these kids around. But I remember when Littlest Pet Shops came about, that was a big toy, and I wanted like a lot of those, to the point that like I wasn't gonna ask my parents to be like, can you buy me a Littlest Pet Shop? So I was like, I gotta earn this money. So I was like dead set on getting money so I could buy Littlest Pet Shops. So I remember my friend Liz Peachy and I, we made a lemonade stand and we set it up at the end of our road, and we were like so excited, and we're gonna make $20 because we were saving up for what was like the grand, like the big thing you wanted for Littlest Pet Shops was this like pet shop, the actual pet shop carrying case thing where you could like put all your little pet shops in.
That.
It was the physical one. Oh no, I bought the zoo maybe.
That's what you bought that.
Yeah.
You didn't get that as a present?
Well, let me just finish the story. So it was like some kind of carrying thing. So if you remember those pet shops, they were like, it was like a cat, a dog, whatever. And there were all these little things, but you need, like, they had these little storage things to put them in. So one was a pet shop, and then they had a zoo one because they had zoo pet shops. So I was like, I need to save up for that. So we do this lemonade stand. You know, lemonade stands, like, what do you charge? Like $0.25? So you would need to sell like a lot of lemonade. And I remember, like, you know, we were like so cute that people were obviously giving us more money. This guy like rolled up in like a Porsche and gave us like dollars. You know, he only bought. You know, well, this is a funny story. The neighbor saw this guy roll up in a Porsche and is like, called dad and was like, oh my God, like there's some guy like out there talking to your little girl, like blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so me and Liz rolled out of there with big $5, guys.
Whoa.
And we felt like millionaires. We were like, yes. We're like, $5. We're like, we're this close to Littlest Pet Shop carrying case.
Got $5.
So I don't know what happened. I'm sure my dad just felt bad because we worked really hard and we only got $5. So he's probably like, here's the rest, the $10, the rest of it.
I had the red carrying pet shop case. You had the blue one.
Mm-hmm.
You got the zoo and the horse stable. I think those were two different things.
Anyway, we got a lot. It was an obsession.
We were spoiled.
It was an obsession. That was like the big thing that year. But then like, but I mostly like, yes, we were very much taking care of her. I didn't have to do anything. But when you could work, so you could get a job till you're 14 in Massachusetts. I don't know if that's different in other states, but we were like ready to go. And I know like all three of us like started working immediately at 14. Like you could not keep us from the job market. We were like, yes.
And we just had like we all worked at the same place.
Yeah.
So it was just like a rite of passage to be like,
Right.
oh, you're 14. Like, okay, now you're going to work at the Ice Cream Cafe.
And then we
So,
did have money.
yeah.
And then it got to that point where then we would use that because then we were in high school and we would buy our clothes with it. You know, they would help us, but like buy our clothes. Once we started driving, obviously that would be for gas. So
I know. I'm
that
trying
kind
to
of
remember.
stuff.
I don't remember like having to to save up for anything when I was little. Like
Yeah.
I don't remember what I would have bought that like I wouldn't have just waited for my birthday
Right.
or Christmas.
It just
to
feel like
get.
we didn't need
I don't know.
anything, but I also don't remember asking for anything.
Right.
Like if we needed video games, like
Oh,
who
we
bought?
asked for that. Dad would just buy them because he
Right.
liked
he
video
liked it.
games.
Yeah, but he didn't play.
He just liked us to have fun.
I know.
I was thinking
That's
again
what I think.
of
That's
like,
what I think it was, and
Dad-
it was mostly Dad.
well,
I
it's
think.
you're gonna be this exact same way.
Oh, totally.
Like you love buying shit for other
Yes.
people, so it's just like the joy you get from seeing
Yes.
somebody else excited about something you got them is just that
and
high.
like and Dad was so good about. I mean, God bless Carol because someone had to probably like rein it in. So whatever, and she was not like whatever. She was not by any means like don't buy that or something. But I think we just always went to our dad. But he also like feel like really wanted us to keep up with like what was going on trend wise too.
well, he loved what was going on.
Right.
Trend-wise. He's always
so he'd
into
be like,
the
okay,
latest.
let's get this new video game. Let's get this new video
Keyboard,
game console. Let's get the
keyboard
keyboard.
too.
Let's get all these new appliances,
Yeah.
like all this
Computers,
stuff. Yeah. You're right, computers. Like he was on top of that shit. Like he had like all the
would go
computer games.
nuts now.
Yeah.
Like
Oh
my god, with iPhones and like forget it. Like Ron D would have virtual reality for sure by
Right
now.
So it's not like we had to ask Dad for anything because
Right.
he bought it himself.
what a blessed
was
life.
awesome.
Blessed life we lived.
Really
Love that,
cool,
Ron
really
D.
cool.
But yeah, I was just thinking the other day, like I think I told this story before, like when we were talking about like best birthdays, but like when I was like, again, this is such like a spoiled child thing, but I was like, oh, I didn't get any presents. So Dad just took me to Toys R Us and like I bought stuff. But I remember when we were
remember that.
in Toys R Us, he was like, what about this? What about, he was like, pointing stuff out like, oh, do you want this? And I'd be like, no.
I wonder what your limit was.
I don't like. I just
Oh, that's
would like,
amazing.
But I didn't go crazy. Like I
Yeah.
didn't. I just got like one video game, a video game manual, a Nintendo 64 controller, 2 Teletubby stuffed animals, and Dad was like, "Oh, what about this keyboard?" And I was like, "Okay." He's obsessed with the keyboard, so he got it for himself. But like,
it's like we never took advantage of this.
I know,
and we weren't even spoiled.
But this is the problem with us, is that we're too nice about stuff. So we're like, "Oh no, I don't want all these things." I mean, whatever. We're great. We're great people.
Story. You had like a toy shopping spree. In Toys R Us, man, that Toy R Us was the best.
It was like crazy.
I loved
literally
going
the
in
best
there.
day of my life. Like it was so fun. Good
So,
times.
okay, last question. So, what if you were Preston Waters? You were Andre Dumas, but if you were in that situation as a kid, what do you think you would have bought with $1 million?
So as a kid, I mean, I guess it would depend like what stage in my life I was at, because we all went through different stages. You know, was this my Polly Pocket
Right,
stage?
right.
Was this my Littlest Pet Shops? Was this my American Girl doll phase? I think the American Girl doll catalog was amazing, and you know, it had so much cool stuff in it. I probably would have flipped through that and been like, I want all the cool things that were way
Yes,
too expensive to buy,
definitely.
like the stuff that we got as like fake, like they had like the American Girl doll bed, and then Mom and Dad were like, "Here, we bought this like doll bed for you at an antique store." We're like, "It's not the same," but
Oh, we loved it.
but like there's the bed sets. Like I probably would have gone nuts on those. The the American Girl doll babies. I would have done that.
Yeah, we never got the babies.
That would have been cool. Yeah, that'd probably be the top for me.
Yeah, like, I mean, Preston goes like nuts and gets very like, he has like a boxing ring with these like big, you know, almost like fake sumo wrestling stuff. He has the big go-kart. I mean, like very boy things, but like, you're right. Like, what would I have got? Probably the same. Like, we were just so into like they had so much a range of all these different kind of dolls when we were growing up. So whether it was like this doll that like its hair changed color when you like put this wand on it, or like the Cabbage Patch, you'd like pull its hair and it would get like long, or Baby Alive. Sweetie got that one
I'm just
year.
gonna Google all these toys when I
and we
later.
did have most of them. Now that I think about like every Christmas, I'm like, oh yeah, we got that one. We got that one.
Cherished love.
Definitely American Girl doll, as Sweetie said. Polly Pocket's huge. As I said, I would have bought every single Littlest Pet Shop that they had and filled 500 pet
Pretty
shops.
sure you did. I think you
I had most of them.
most of them
Yeah, I had
at
most
some
of them.
point. But yeah, man, I could. Littlest Pet Shop, so fun. I don't know. I had the best time with that.
Oh yeah, you know what? I definitely
I
would
had
have
the
got.
vet too.
Oh, the
I got
vet,
that
yeah,
for
yeah.
Christmas. Yeah.
I definitely would have got the Power Wheels. So do you remember Power
Oh,
Wheels?
yeah.
So it was like a mini car basically, and our like kind of wealthy, our dad's cousins' kids were like a bit more wealthy than us, quite a bit, and they had Power Wheels. And I remember like I was too big to fit into it, but I crammed myself into that little Jeep, man, and I was driving that thing around their house. It was so
those
fun.
were like
I wanted a Power Wheel so
Yeah,
bad.
that was like top of the top. Like
Oh, yeah.
you
I wonder
only
how
had
much
that if
those
you had
were.
money. I know. Let's look it up.
Yeah.
Good times.
But other than that, we were pretty like, you know, low key. Video games, I think we would have bought like a ton of video games. Yeah. But now, obviously, like I said, I'd be like, yeah, let me pay off those student loans. How
Fat chance.
about
I mean, like I'm in the
new
situation
clothes?
right now where I'm like, oh, here is
Good
$5,000 because I got some Amazon stock, and I'm like, I should save this, and then I'm like, I need these 20 things, and then you just like, whoops.
Yep.
So I don't know. You know, it's tough. Money, it's hard. It's hard, guys. But wow. Hour and 11 minutes about
It's always the
blank
bad movies.
check. I'm telling you, the bad movies have the better conversations.
They do.
It's just it's the fact
A
of life.
lot to say.
Yeah. Anything else you want to
No.
say? The last parting words,
No.
guys. Movie's not great, but if you
Okay.
want to watch it and get drunk or high or whatever, it's on Disney Plus. So sweet, it's a Disney movie. So yeah, I mean, I recommend for like if you want to get in on this weirdness. Like,
Yeah. I mean, you will not believe it.
yeah.
And
It's come find us, talk to us
did
about
not
it.
remember that when I saw that the one time.
Yeah, crazy. But yeah, we're on Twitter at the Sweetie Club or on Instagram at Large. Marge sent us. Thank you as always for listening. Bye.
Blank Chick Rippers.